to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Good afternoon, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast on this Tuesday, July the 23rd. I'm your host, Michael Leva, joined by Jason Sarney from right here at DolphinsTalk.com. Jason, how you doing today?
Doing well. You know, we spoke about an hour and a half ago just saying, let's jump on a show, talk about one or two things. About 14 things basically happened. So doing well, but we'll rapid fire it right now.
We got a flurry of news here. The first official day of Miami Dolphins training camp. They weren't on the field practicing, but there is a ton of news to talk about as there's been so much happening. But before we get to any of that, as always, today's show is brought to you by Caneswear. Caneswear is a place to go for officially licensed apparel for the Miami Dolphins, the Miami Heat, the Hurricanes, Florida Panthers, and all the professional and college teams in South Florida. Looking for the latest jersey, a gift, or the newest hat to hit the market of your favorite South Florida team? Check out Caneswear for their overwhelming selection of sports apparel. Located at 2655 South University Drive in Davie, Florida, Caneswear has it all. If you're not in South Florida, don't worry. Visit Caneswear.com to shop their inventory from the comfort of your home, and they will ship it to you, including international fans as well. Caneswear.com is the spot that Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com. Caneswear.com. Also, before we start, a big shout out to everyone listening at FinHeaven.com. Everyone go to FinHeaven.com, the largest Miami Dolphins message board on the internet. Also, a shout out to our friends at the I Am a Miami Dolphins fan Facebook page, run by the great and talented Carlos Hernandez. And wherever you're listening to this podcast, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Podbean, Podchaser, Audible, or one of the 100 platforms are on, hit that subscribe button right now. Subscribe. Football season's here. Training camp is open. We're going to have shows pretty much every day of the week, getting you up to speed on what happened that day in Miami Dolphins training camp. You're not going to want to miss an episode. And as always, thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to listen to us here at the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. I know when it comes to podcasts, there are 1,000 options these days, not just with the Miami Dolphins, but with true crime, with politics, with other sports, NBA, Major League Baseball, music, movies. And we do thank you for taking a few minutes to join us and listen. And if you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button. It does help. Okay, Jason, let's start, I guess, with the biggest news of the day. Odell Beckham placed on the PUP list per Tom Pelissero, the NFL Network. Per Tom Pelissero, he said, not a major injury, it sounded like just a bunch of smaller nagging injuries. And I think overall, look, when you sign an Odell Beckham, like with an Armstead and like with others, he don't need training camp. He'll be ready week one. And this kind of opens up the door for more of an opportunity for these younger wide receivers on the team now in training camp to get a look until Odell comes back and is on the field and ready to go. So what are your thoughts here on Odell Beckham starting training camp on PUP?
You know, it's not anything to overreact about. They're going to be doing a flurry of like administrative moves. And as just for example, you got an undrafted free agent go on the active POP last week for a non-football related situation. He's activated a week later. A couple more people go on the list. A couple more people get signed, get put on the list. This is all administrative for a guy, as you mentioned, like a veteran like Odell Beckham Jr. He's kind of one of those guys that just when he's on the field, just do you. I don't care if he's starting a little bit out off the field to ease him in. So completely fine. It's really, the least amount of worry on a tweet where there was a lot of administrative moves and that PUP word or several words, but it's not a big deal.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys. When you've been in this league as long as he has and stuff, you can get yourself ready. Yes, you want to be out there on the field when there's practices and you want to work with your with the other guys on the team and all that kind of stuff. But Odell, he'll be ready come week 1, and he'll make sure he's ready to go. And if you missed it, Odell Beckham joined Big Ian Berger this past Saturday for a quick interview. So if you missed that show, wherever you're listening to this podcast, check out the Odell Beckham interview that we had here on this podcast from Saturday. In other wide receiver news, 7th round pick Taj Washington, who was put on PUP last week, has now been placed on IR, and his season's over. Unfortunate. I'm not even quite sure exactly what the injury is. They said last week when he was placed on PUP, he was injured this past offseason in a workout. So it sounded like he might have even been hurt in like an OTA or something. Not exactly sure what the injury is, but his season's over. So we won't see him until 2025, it sounds like, Jason.
It's unfortunate. It happens. You draft a player. They obviously just get IR'd for their season scratch. But this is a guy who you could hopefully, we'll put a pin in, you know what I mean? And just come back to him next year and just hopefully all things go well with him in his getting football ready when that time comes. But the Dolphins happen to have, and this is no disrespect to the situation with Taj, they just happen to have a very long list of wide receivers in camp. So if something were to open up in one less name, this is an absorbable scenario. You know what I mean? The worst of it is that he was a candidate in my mind because he has a lot of return capabilities from his college days. I thought he would have been a fun candidate to see on year 1 of that kickoff return. So I could deal with that with the other candidates on the team that are probably would have been ahead of him on that depth chart anyway. So I'm okay. Hopefully Taj will be okay. We should move on and just wish the rest of the wide receivers a good battle, because that's what it's going to be this summer.
Yeah, if there was one position where they could sustain an injury or two, wide receivers, if this was like edge rusher or something, we'd really be more screwed than we were this past weekend. Or if this were like an offensive tackle even. I mean, so wide receiver was the one place. And again, the odds of him even making this team were probably slim, but he had a shot because he was obviously a pick in the draft. So Taj Washington's out for the season. The Miami Dolphins also placed linebacker David Long on PUP as well. No word here what the injury is. Again, he's another veteran. He'll be ready. And when he's ready to come off, if it's in a week or 2, or even if it's 3, he'll come off. Because I don't know. I'm sure we'll get more information on this in the next few days or so. So maybe on a show that we do on like Wednesday or Thursday, we'll have more information on Long and why he's on the PUP list. But right now, David Long's on the PUP list. And when the Miami Dolphins take the practice field tomorrow on Wednesday, he won't be out there, Jason.
Another veteran, he came into the Dolphins last year. Year 1 was fantastic, was one of the highest graded run stopping linebackers, was really just a key addition. And he's in a contract year again. So this could be just a situation where if they could do some administrative business by keeping a veteran off the field for a bit, having a little bit more time to evaluate someone else, maybe it's a great time for Jordan Brooks to become completely, acclimated and assimilated to this new team offense and what have you, because he's a guy in that same kind of thumper mindset that I'm very interested to see how Anthony Weaver, new defensive coordinator, kind of uses those two players in tandem together, what have you, whatever the rotation could be. But again, not worried about Long. Of course, if something comes out where it could trickle into the season and he's missing time, he is not someone I'd like to see out. So
no, they need him,
but they need him. Exactly right. So
they need him. Yeah, they need him.
Much to do, got nothing until it's something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Until we get more information of why he's on the PUP list. If it's something like the Odell Beckham thing, where he, just got some small stuff, he's just gonna sit out until he's just 100% ready to go. Fine. If it's something major, once again, we're screwed because linebacker. Nobody wants to see Channing Tindall on the field. I'm just going to say it out loud. Nobody wants to see Riley, start. Nice player, Riley. Nice guy to have on the team to run down a punt. You don't want him out there as your starting linebacker. So for Long, hopefully it's just minor, and this is more precautionary. But again, we don't have the information at this time, so we'll probably have more on that on the show I do tomorrow. Because I think I'll be doing a show with Ian Berger. So probably Wednesday's show. Hopefully we have some information there. And some positive news, I guess we could say. The Dolphins signed Emmanuel Ogbah to a 1-year deal worth up to $5 million with incentives. Again, as I've said the last 2 days on this show, since Shaq Barrett retired out of the blue on Saturday, they had to sign somebody. And the top two guys on my list were the two guys they worked on Monday, which were Ogbah and Yannick Ngakoue. I think I said that right this time, even though he's not going to be here now. But they signed Ogbah today. And here's what I'll say. I don't know if they're done yet. I think they had to sign one now because they needed somebody. And I think you want to see how the rookies do a week or two into camp. If the rookies look good, great. But we know rookies are rookies. And everyone hopes Chop Robinson's great. Hope, hope, hope. Everyone hopes Muhammad Kamara is great. Hope, hope, hope. But let's just say Chop because he was a first-round pick. He gets all the attention. We all hope Charles Harris was great. We all hoped that Deion Jordan was great. They weren't. So you're not going to find it out a week or two in the camp, but you might get a quick impression of, is this guy going to be ready to actually play significant snaps early in his NFL career, or is this going to be a project with either one of these guys? Because even the other one was picked around 5. Everyone likes Muhammad Kamara. I like Muhammad Kamara. Picked around 5 for a reason. They want to probably see what they got before they maybe add someone else. And that might have been the case even if Shaq didn't retire. Because honestly, they got nothing. I mean, Chubb ain't coming back till probably late October, first part of November, best case scenario. And as I said on the shows over the weekend, Chubb's made his money. He ain't rushing back. I mean, not that he doesn't want to help help the team and get on the field, but there's no incentive for him to rush. He's made his money. Jaylen Phillips hasn't, so he probably is going to rush a little bit. But even when he comes back, even best case, he's back week 1 or week 2. Great. He might not be the same player he was prior to the injury. He might be on a snap count. We don't know. So I think they're probably going to want to get a look at the rookies at the edge rusher position. And in a couple weeks, Jason, reevaluate. And if they need to go out there, maybe they can't afford Ogbah and Yannick Ngakoue. Well, maybe they go out there and add Melvin Ingram, or they add Lawson, who might be a little bit cheaper, or they add whoever they view, someone a little bit cheaper. They add someone else is the point. But they're probably going to want to see the rookies first and then reevaluate, first, second week of August, let's say.
It's a great opportunity with this administration to evaluate, as you stated. As far as, Chubb getting back healthy, I agree, October-ish, is it? And, of course, the rookies materialize under the tutelage of Anthony Weaver, which I think that it is huge because, whether you read it, whether you hear it on on podcasts, the players love Anthony Weaver. He's a cut up. He's great. They relate to him. So hopefully that's cool, but hopefully they need to translate that on the field and untap the talent. So if you have Chubb getting healthy, but let's say in aggregate, both Chop and Mo as rookies are contributing with Ogbah, with Calais Campbell, then you know what? This is fantastic when these guys come back. So let's see what happens with everything in terms of the Weaver rotation and all. But how, the Chubb situation, I agree. Veteran made his money. I don't think there's
but he's not going to rush it either.
I don't think there's a rush. And I think with what the Dolphins have seen injury-wise, you really want to make sure they're 100%. I mean, unless it's a god-awful pinch and other God forbid injuries are happening and where 85% is just a necessity because you got 0% 4 other places. You know what I mean? So, not another situation to go crazy about. A lot of people love to overreact, but I just don't think it's a overreact scenario just yet.
No, I think this is going to be a work in progress over the next month because they're going to watch specifically Chop Robinson and Muhammad Kamara, and how they act starting on Wednesday with the first practice, and then how they react when they get into the joint practices, and how they look when they get into the preseason games, and they're gonna see how these guys are coming along. And if they're coming along, quickly, or they're coming along, hey, these guys aren't too bad. To where week 1 you can play these guys, 25 snaps each, however many snaps each, whatever. You're like, okay, and then you mix in. Ogbah, and then you mix in some other guys that you maybe slide around just till you get, the reinforcements back eventually, they're going to be fine. But if those guys look like rookies and there's too much on their plate, which does happen, again, we all hope these guys are great, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. They'll probably go out there and look to add another veteran. I'm not sure it's going to be another high-priced guy like a Yannick, who's probably going to want a little bit more money than maybe somebody else. But there are other guys out there who, as we saw in the playoff game last year, we picked up guys on a Tuesday, started them on a Saturday. Wasn't awful, but those types of guys are out there to where if they have to play for a month or so until Jaylen gets back and Chubb gets back, it's not the end of the world, but that's probably what they're monitoring, knowing that those guys are out there. We can add them pretty much at any time. Let's see what the rookies are first in training camp and how they look and how they react. And that's probably where we are because, as I said, Jason, on the show last night, I did, Dolphins going to training camp with 3 glaring questions they need to get answers to before week 1 in Jacksonville. Number 1, who's your right guard, who's your left guard, and whoever wins those jobs, can they play at an adequate level? Someone's going to win the jobs, we know that. But can they play at an adequate level to where it doesn't hinder the offense? That's question number 1. Question number 2, where are you going to get your pass rush and who are your edge rushers going to be? Well, we signed Ogbah today, so that answers part of the question. But are you going to be able to get a consistent pass rush until Chubb comes back and Jaylen comes back? What's your pass rush going to be? And question 3, which leads into our next topic, is there going to be quarterback drama that's going to be a distraction for everybody? And that leads into the third topic of the day is training camp is now open. We are now on Tuesday evening at 6:18 p.m. here on the East Coast, Jason. Tua Watch Day 1. I should have had a sound effect for this. Dun, dun, dun. We're on Tua Watch Day 1. And by Tua Watch, I mean, will he practice on Wednesday or won't he practice on Wednesday? As of the time of this recording, we do not know. And from all of the speculation that took place on Tuesday, we don't know. Now, if I had to bet a nickel, I think he will practice on Wednesday when he takes the field. I should say Wednesday if I misspoke there. I think he will practice because today, on Tuesday, Jeff Darlington, very respected reporter for ESPN, tied into the Dolphins as well as anybody, went on the Pat McAfee show. And he had some interesting comments. And I'm going to share those comments. Now, he was on NFL Live last night. Let me see. What did he say? Let me get the comments he said on NFL Live on Monday night before I say what he said on Tuesday. I have him here. Not prepared. Poor job by me, Jason. Here it is. Jeff Darlington on NFL Live. I still don't really get the sense that they are close enough to where this is going to happen, meaning a contract extension, long-term deal, with any intimate urgency. That's what he said Monday on NFL Live, Jeff Darlington. Then on Tuesday, Pat McAfee, he said this. A month ago, negotiations weren't even close. The contract that was on the table, Tua, he did not perceive it as being his market value. Since then, both sides have been amicable, and the sides are inching closer. Jeff has no indication if Tua will practice on Wednesday. Jeff, he believes if Tua is on the field Wednesday, if he practices, it means both sides are not close to a deal, and Tua will play out the season and be a free agent after the season. Jeff says, on the opposite, if he does sit out practice on Wednesday and he's not going to practice, much like Jordan Love with the Packers, as that was announced on Monday, he believes they've made some progress. There might be light at the end of the tunnel, and they're getting closer on a long-term deal. So Wednesday, we might get a good indication. If he's not practicing, it might mean they're getting closer on a deal, and he's not going to risk anything to it because they're kind of close. If they're not close, he has to know Tua, well, I ain't getting a deal this offseason, so I might as well go out there and practice because they're not going to pay me now. They're not going to pay me next month. They're not going to pay me in September. I got to play out this season and then become a free agent at the end of the year. Jeff went on to say there is a clear divide where the team is just not ready to commit the type of money it would take to Tua. And Tua and his agents feel he shouldn't have to take anything less than a top-of-the-market deal. That's where there's the divide. What Jeff said that was really interesting, Jason, was that if you look at this from a business standpoint, if you sign him now compared to signing him after the season, even if he blows up the season and is the number one quarterback this season, he blows up and is great, the money you have to pay him, Jeff believes, and many others believe, would be the same because other general managers, not Chris Grier, have told Jeff they wouldn't pay him $50 million plus per season because those general managers feel because he has Tyreek, because he has Waddle, because he has Mike McDaniel in that system, of course he's going to put up numbers in that system. Other teams feel if I brought Tua to my team, he wouldn't be as successful as he is in Miami, and he's in the perfect system. So that's what Jeff Darlington said. There's a lot to unpack there. And I don't know, Jason, what are some of your thoughts?
It's a really interesting scenario with the specificities of it because, I don't like the term system quarterback. You got to be in a number of systems to figure out which system you might be in. I know Tua is kind of that, but I'm not discounting that he can succeed elsewhere, but he's perfect for this system. I'm not like closing the book on anything that he could do outside of Mike McDaniel's offense when given proper weapons, because we've all seen what he was doing when fourth and fifth string receivers were his 1 and 2 targets. So I really understand both sides, worry and concerns. On the Dolphins side, they could say something and be right with, look, as good of a year that you had, as good of a system quarterback in this one that we have you in, you're succeeding in, you've only played 1 full year healthy. Now, that's not wrong. But the Tua side of things could say on the same thing, we want the security to know in this kind of a game that he's got, you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to say that I want the money in case of injury, but you can't not negotiate that way if you're Tua's agent. You have to protect the long-term interest of the client. So I really think the best person to mirror is actually Trevor Lawrence. The way that the lifeblood of that contract is working.
Contract he should get. Yep.
That's the contract. And now when you look at the stats, and I don't want to hear about the playoffs yet. I don't want to hear about lack of this or that in the playoffs, because many quality quarterbacks have hit their stride 5th, 6th, 7th year and beyond, and then done damage in the postseason. So when you talk to us about straight numbers in terms of who are Tua's peers, it's very Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff-y. You know what I mean? So I think that there's got to be a little bit, it's got to be that stereotypical compromise where both sides leave a little bit unhappy. That's the definition of a perfect compromise, where each side has to kind of come down a little bit, but it's warranted. I don't think he deserves to be the top paid quarterback in the world. I just don't. And I feel like we're probably, what time is it, 6:30? We could be 24 hours away from the highest paid quarterback, Jordan Love, resetting the market. Literally, it could happen any minute. And it's athletes first. It's the same organization that just today got a cornerback, the top contract in that position. So this is the MO in terms of their negotiation prowess. I just think in this situation, as you said, that Jeff Darlington said, that Pat McAfee said through him, where's the market?
He said on the Pat McAfee.
No, right. That was reiterating what Jeff said on the show. Sorry if I broke that chain. But the market might not be a scenario where if Tua balls out, it's going to be a feeding frenzy on the agents getting calls from every team breaking the bank a la Christian Wilkins broke the bank. I just think that this is a perfect marriage. There's good and bad in all marriages. Just get it done. And ultimately, when push comes to shove, I think that it will.
Yeah, and that's what it is. Tua, and I know it took a while for us to get there with the last head coach and everything that went on, Tom Brady and Watson. It took a while for us to get there, but we got to the point where he's in a perfect situation for him. And I think with these other general managers who are telling Jeff Darlington is like, he's great, but he's not going to have Waddle and Tyreek here. Say just a random team. Say he comes to Giants. He ain't going to have Tyreek and Waddle here. Not going to have Mike McDaniel calling plays. Say he goes to the Raiders. That's great. You might have Adams. You might not. He kind of wants out. Say he goes to wherever, the Saints. He's not going to have that type of same situation he has in Miami. So his value to teams like that isn't $50+ million a year. His value to Miami, though, probably is around $50+ million a year. And I've been saying this on shows all week. I won't go into it again because I've said it on the past 2 nights. This is where the Dolphins lose me at times. I'll defend them. I'll say, this is where they lose me. It's that they've gone down the road so far with this kid, and to now sort of hit this roadblock. And again, I don't care if you love Tua or hate Tua. It's got nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do if you think Tua is the best quarterback in the league. It has nothing to do if you think Tua is better than Lawrence, if he's better than Herbert. It has nothing to do with that. Because when these deals come up, the next guy in line just becomes, the highest paid guy or close to the highest paid guy. That's just how the NFL works. You're not going to circumvent that. And the Dolphins are trying to circumvent that. And if they wanted to circumvent that, they should have got off their fat ass back in January, February, March, April, and May, prioritized this and done it then before Goff got paid, before Lawrence got paid, and before Love got paid, because it just kept going up on them. And if they wanted to, that was their chance to circumvent that. They missed that window. And Love's going to get done this week. So is what it is. And here's another tidbit from Adam Schefter this morning on ESPN Radio. Doesn't necessarily talk about Tua, but the quarterback market in general. What Schefter said, once Jordan Love signs his new contract this week at some point, which everyone expects to happen, we all know it's going to happen. He's going to be the highest paid quarterback in the league, break the bank. That Dak Prescott next offseason, because it ain't going to happen now, whether it's with the Cowboys or with another team, is going to get a contract, he goes, that is going to be $60+ million per season. That's where the quarterback market is going, okay? And if the Dolphins don't have the foresight, they didn't have it with Wilkins, and they haven't had it with other players. If they don't have the foresight to see where this market's going, they're fools. And I don't know what else to say. Like, I'm not even the biggest Tua supporter. I've been saying this on the show. I like him. I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback. I think he's a good enough quarterback to where if you give him some weapons like we have, a smart head coach like we have, and you build up the defense, you can win a Super Bowl. You can win an AFC East. You can win playoff games. I'm not saying, look, I'm not one of these guys on social media who is just criticized Tua a little. They flip out, they twist themselves into pretzels, they make up facts, they make up lies, and they just defend, and they're going to yell at every reporter who criticizes. He's a good player. He's good. I don't know if he's great, but good quarterbacks, because that's such an important position, get paid. If you're the next guy in line, you're, maybe not number one, but you're, top 2 or 3 paid quarterback. That's just how it works. And the Dolphins are trying to go around that, and it ain't going to work because his agent ain't going to let it happen. They're too smart. So we'll see how this goes. If he ends up playing out the year, though, there's talk about putting the transition tag and franchise tag. Great. That means we got to go through this drama for a whole year. And then next March, we're going to put a hard, $45 million from a franchise tag on the cap, be way over the cap, have to cut so many guys just to get to the cap. And then good luck trying to sign anyone else. And you're still going to have a quarterback pissed off because now he's playing on a franchise tag when he just wants a long-term deal that he's probably earned at this point. And just give him the freaking Lawrence deal. And in 3 years, you can probably move on from him because how that deal's kind of worked. You take a little bit of a hit. And if it's not working, if it works, you're great. If it's not working, you take the hit. You fire McDaniel. You fire Grier. You get rid of Tua. And you move on. Because if we come down this far with him, what's 3 more years at this point? But what do I know? I'm not the guy in charge of the team who hasn't won a playoff game in 20 years. I'm not the owner. I don't run this team. We'll do it this way, which I have very low expectations. This is going to work out for the Dolphins when all is said and done. And hopefully someone comes to their senses at this point and just gives this kid the Trevor Lawrence deal, and we all can move on with our lives. But doesn't look like it's going to happen from all the people we're talking to. And here's the deal, Jason. I'll say this one more thing. By not paying him, he's going to have the year of his life, and he's going to be like, bye-bye at the end of the year. Bye-bye. I don't want to be here no more.
Then the odd thing about that, and it just creates more fun question to ask yourself, because when you look at what he didn't have last year and had the statistical year despite what he didn't have, well, he didn't have a very viable third wide receiver option. And now it's really a toss-up between a healthy Odell Beckham Jr. Maybe we could talk about a rookie Malik Washington stepping up in the slot, which, by the way, did he have a viable NFL-worthy slot receiver? I love a couple of the receivers on the Dolphins depth chart, but are we talking about a top-tier potential? We're talking about, a guy who led his conference in football in receptions in the nation in Malik Washington, mostly from the slot. So let's throw that in there. I love Durham Smythe, but no tight end scored a touchdown last year for the Miami Dolphins. So now you interestingly look at the tight ends that they signed. Here's the little stat dive that I did on both Jonnu Smith and Jody Fortson. And now when you throw in Durham Smythe, it's now my favorite new term since I've ever seen the movie Moneyball. It's making up for one player with 3 of them in the aggregate. Let's look at George Kittle. George Kittle's not walking through that door. San Francisco 49ers, Kyle Shanahan, perfect tight end who can do it all. Well, you know what? When you break down Jody Fortson and Jonnu Smith and how they make their money and their yards and their bones, Jonnu Smith has a yards after catch per reception comparable to George Kittle. They are the top two since Jonnu's rookie year. That's that. So you have the George Kittle on a catch and then boom, knock people off run when you need that kind of scenario. Yak, 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 yak. And now Jody Fortson has really a couple of versatile skill sets. Number one, in the red zone. He's got 4 touchdowns out of his 14 career receptions, which all came from inside the 10. 3 of them came from the 2 or in. So when you have a Travis Kelce on the line, maybe at the same time of Fortson, you got a 2 tight end set and Mahomes goes on the goal line to Jody Fortson, his number could be called with one of those other tight ends on the field, and all of a sudden it's a Jody Fortson touchdown. Now, when he goes out for yardage, he has a basically a depth per target that's extremely comparable to Mark Andrews and Kyle Pitts. So now you got a component of a guy who could line up at tight end, maybe a little offline at that position, who runs a good 12, 13-yard route and creates yardage that way. And so you might not be expecting that from a Dolphins tight end room that, when you look at what they had last year, was very blocking, rudimentary football, not really being red zone targets. And now they have an extremely diverse and versatile group that, if you put them in the aggregate, could make up some really intriguing tight end usage and combinations.
Yeah. I love the weapons on offense this year. I love all the weapons at running back. We didn't talk about that. Even Salvon Ogbah today, he was put on the non-injury list last week. He was removed, so he's ready to go now starting tomorrow. And then obviously he got Wright and Achane and Raheem Mostert. And at wide receiver, they obviously have all this depth this year, and so they got some new blood injected there. Tight end room has been revamped. He's got more than enough weapons. He's going to be fine. I worry about the offensive line, but that's a whole different story for a different day. But I think they're going to be fine. And here's a good comment here in our chat from Patrick Mullen. Let me see if I found it. And it's kind of what I spoke about yesterday a little bit. Mike, perhaps the organization has always completely oversold the idea of how much they are sold on quarterback one for the long term. Yep, they have, clearly. Because now they're at a moment in time where the rubber met the road, where it's time to put pen to paper and pay them, and they won't. So that's why moving forward, when it's Grier or McDaniel, anytime they open their mouth and start talking about players, in one ear, out the other, because it's all bullshit. Because if they don't pay this kid now, and by now I mean prior to week 1, I don't care what they ever have to say about anyone else, because they have propped this kid up and praised him, which is fair, because he has played well. No one's saying him. And, he's this, he's that. Oh, we love him. He's our guy. He's the best, blah, blah, blah. But when the rubber met the road and push came to shove, they won't pay him. So I don't care what they say about any player moving forward. I believe in it, because this is their moment. And again, every other team figures this stuff out. We're the one that hasn't. And it blows your mind. And that's where the frustration is. Again, I don't care if you love Tua or hate him. It blows your mind how they fumbled this whole situation. And we're at this point, and Wednesday's going to be an interesting day. If he's on the field practicing, and if he's not, and he's probably going to have to meet with the media one day this week, and that's going to be must-see TV, because the questions are going to come fast and furious, and we know how he doesn't like it talking about this stuff, and he's going to be uncomfortable. He's probably going to be a little awkward, but that's going to be must-see TV when Tua meets with the press this week, unless they shield him from it, and he's not, which I don't think they'll do that either. Okay, last topic was Tyreek Hill. Jeff Darlington, they asked him about Tyreek, because Tyreek also met today with the media on the first day of training camp. Said, yes, he wants a new deal, but don't trade him. Because, I want to get paid, but don't trade me. I want to be here. So Jeff said he expects Tyreek to get a new deal at some point, especially because Mike McDaniel is a big advocate in his corner. Tyreek has sort of sent some warning shots out to the Dolphins, saying kind of, if you don't pay me now, that's fine. It's cool. But if you don't pay me after the season, then we're going to have a problem. Jeff says he expects Tyreek to get a new deal after the season and not now, which makes sense, because Miami this past offseason, specifically in March, restructured Armstead's deal, restructured Ramsey's deal. They restructured everyone's deal except for Tyreek. And I should tell you something. So Tyreek, I think, he's going to remind people every week, hey, I want to get paid. I want more money. But it might not happen, Jason, until after the season.
Tyreek's a cut up. He's going to answer questions his unique way. You know what I mean? So that's fun. But, if the Dolphins do decide to make that move, it could save them, I believe, $12 million in change in salary. Not save them, bad term. They could, trim.
Restructure. Yeah.
They could restructure and trim $12 additional million in their salary cap this year, which could, of course, help in their other negotiations or whatever they want to do. So it could be.
It could maybe help sign someone like Javon Holland. It could maybe help sign someone like Jaylen Phillips or quarterback one. That money could come in handy. But again, that money, if for some reason, and again, we don't know what these people think, and we don't clearly, because I think even people who don't support, I know some people who just hate them, but most fans of Dolphins logically, just give them this extension. Let's move past this and move on. They clearly don't see it this way. Clear with the offensive line, Dolphins. Get some real offensive linemen out there. They don't see it this way.
That's an issue. That happens to be an issue.
They view things. Yeah, they view things, which is fine because that's what they're paid to do. Fans shouldn't be making decisions. People in the media shouldn't be making decisions. But they're very stubborn in their ways, which is why I've said this year, if this season kind of goes off the rails because the offensive line isn't playing well, that's on them. They made a conscious choice. Okay. Yes, they didn't have to sign Hunt for $100 million, but there's a difference between $100 million and nothing. And they chose nothing. Okay. There's other guys. Jack Driscoll cannot be your big offensive line signing of the offseason. I'm just sorry. Like there were guys they could have signed who were far less than $100 million players. They chose nothing. That's a choice. When you make a choice, you got to live with the consequences. So I'm not going to cut them slack. Like they cannot show up by like week 3 and go, oh my God, win an Armstead. They're always freaking hurt. You cannot be surprised by that. And then be like scrambling where, we're out there with Kendall Lamb, Lester Cotton, Robert Jones. It just feels like Groundhog Day for the 100th day in a row that we're in this hell. So hopefully, hope's not a plan, but we're going to hope, Jason. We're going to hope that, everything works out in this offensive line. I do think it's going to probably be Robert Jones and Liam Eichenberg starting at guards. That's my prediction as of now. We'll see when it's all said and done. I think Jones at right guard, great run blocker, can't pass block to save his life. And I think Liam's in a contract year. He'll be motivated. And much like all the guys last year who were in contract year, he'll play okay because he's in the contract year and he's motivated. I think those are going to be 2 guys starting at your guards. I don't trust Wynn as far as you can throw him, and he deserves to be a backup because he can't stay healthy as a starter. So as a backup, put him in there in a pinch. That's where he belongs, honestly. That's his role. That's what should be his role.
The thing is, you could discuss the offensive line and say, all you want in a negative sense. And you're allowed. You actually are allowed because, the system, I think, masks the deficiencies, especially when you get, 12 combinations deep. It's not a made-up number. 12 combinations of 5 offensive linemen were utilized last year in those injury pinches. And Isaiah Wynn, you start at left guard. He plays very well from a pass pro standpoint. I don't believe he allowed a sack, maybe a couple of pressures in his 7-8 games, whatever it was. And then you have, an issue of rotating guys in because, you had a Robert Hunt injury who eventually is now out with the Panthers. And you don't re-sign or draft like a stud at right guard. You're actually saying, all right, well, we're going to stick with some guys who we used in a pinch last year, rotationally, bring in a guy who was used in a pinch rotationally in Philly, and we'll be all right. We got Butch Barry, so that's a very laissez-faire approach again to a very, very important position. And the numbers do mask the deficiencies. Yes, you could look at the stats and say Tua was the most upright quarterback, least quarterback hit, and I think the 3rd least sack quarterback. Sure, but in an offense that's predicated on 1 Mississippi balls out.
Yep.
If he was Peyton Manning, Drew Bledsoe, these taller, stay in the pocket, read, Dan Marino's kind of style quarterback,
Tom Brady,
he'd get killed because of the line. So they got ways to go on the line.
And that's what makes the Patrick Paul round 2 pick so interesting. They took the one left tackle who has 0 position flexibility. He's a left tackle. They took the one guy who can't move, which is fine if you like him, and I understand why they like him. He's a mountain of a man, and if you're drawing up an offensive tackle on a piece of paper, he's the guy. If you watch a team walking off the bus, I want him on my team. That guy's huge. I get why they like him. I know he's raw. I know he's got to have some work done, but he's not a guy you can slide over to left guard or to right guard.
No.
It
just doesn't work that way. Yeah.
After they took Paul, I forget 4 of the next 6 picks or 6 of the next 8 picks, something like that. I can't remember the exact now. We're all offensive tackles. And most of those offensive tackles, if not all of them, have some position flexibility where you can move inside the guard. So they could have used a second-round pick on an offensive tackle who maybe this year could start at guard, like Laramie Tunsil did the year we had with him and stuff. So, but they didn't go that route, which means it's fine because if Patrick Paul is your left tackle for the next, 8 years, starting next year, cool beans. We're all cool with that. But if he's not, then you kind of shot yourself in the foot and taking a guy who can only play one position on one side of the ball, and he has no position flexibility, so you can't move him anywhere else to try to save him. Like if Liam Eichenberg, who was drafted as a right tackle, failed at right tackle, and you couldn't move him to left tackle, left guard, right guard, center, we'd be like, that's the worst pick ever. Well, folks, Patrick Paul, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And that's why I am most interested to see this whole training camp. Training camp to me, it's nice, but nothing counts till week 1. Patrick Paul, I want to see him enjoying practices, how he holds up.
Yeah.
Because physically, he's an NFL player. Not all these guys who come into the league are. He is. But I want to see how raw he is, how close he is, and best case, he beats out Kendall Lamb as your backup left tackle. That's what because Lamb wants to retire too. He signed late because he wanted to retire. I want Patrick Paul to beat out Kendall Lamb because then it gives me hope next year this time. Okay, we got a left tackle of the future. Let's go.
The Dolphins extended Austin Jackson after a very solid year, one of 4 years, essentially
4 good years,
3 years. Well, what a 4 good years.
It was hurt 1 year.
But what Chris Grier is a gambler in this sense. He's always gambling. It seems like with these deals. What he's showing his hand with, you lock up the blind side on the right side of the tackle, and then you bookend it, backing up, and the future after Teron Armstead. So, he's telling everyone that he needs to spend his money more so immediately on the right side for his lefty quarterback, but also solidify the left tackle. So really, I think that Grier is saying, all right, we could be okay from the interior in this positionless football, whatever, But my dog really gets upset with the
Jason's
offensive line
dog
talk.
wants your attention now, so that means we got
to. He could play a left guard. He can pull with the best of them right there. He runs out there nice. But whatever.
That's going to be interesting. Patrick Paul.
Patrick Paul. Me too. Hopefully, if Kendall Lamb is playing above him, that's bad news.
Well, it's not bad news if Lamb is playing well. Because if they're all playing well, that's great news. But you kind of want to see Patrick Paul grab this job because that gives you some hope. But if Lamb, if it's close, that's cool. If he's playing close to Lamb's level, because we saw Lamb last year play so well, if he's playing close to Lamb's level, I'm okay with that. But it'd be best case scenario for him to win that job to be the number 2 left tackle. And I'm sure, once again, the first practice is tomorrow. Some of these guys aren't going to practice much. Armstead should not practice much. We need Armstead week 1. I do not need to see him in August or in late July at all. So hopefully and I'm sure they will, because it sounds like they're really cautious with a lot of these veterans. With Ramsey, don't need to see him much. Armstead, don't need to see them much, because these are the 2 guys last year this time who got hurt and missed substantial time. And those are just 2 names. There's going to be others. Even Hill. Don't need to see Hill every day. We know Tyreek Hill's great. We're good. Save him to week 1. There's a lot of these guys you don't need to see every day. So if you see, once we get into the practice days and we're running down the notes, so-and-so's not practicing, it's probably a good thing, because as we saw with this Dolphins team last year and the year before, injuries can end your season before it even starts, and we don't want any injuries now for obvious reasons. Nobody wants injuries. All right. That's all for today's show. Everyone, thank you for listening. Check out Jason Sarney on Twitter. Jason, what's your handle on Twitter? Off the top of my head, I forgot. Is it Jason underscore
nice and easy.
Jason underscore Sarney? Follow myself at Dolphins Talk. Check us out, the website, DolphinsTalk.com. We got some videos. We got some articles up. Check them out. We'll have more in the coming days. We'll be back show tomorrow, myself and Big E, Ian Berger, in our typical Wednesday time slot. We'll have practice notes to talk about, so that'll be fun. and check out everything. And I don't care where you're listening to this podcast, folks. Hit that subscribe button. Don't miss it. And if you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button. Everyone have a great Tuesday night. Have a great Wednesday if you're listening to this on Wednesday. And folks, don't forget, we still must put an end to highway profanity.